The rancher had lost everything. Until he rescued her only daughter, Jack Coleman stood at the edge of his ranch, staring out over the dry, cracked fields that used to be filled with tall, green grass. The wind whispered through the skeletal remains of what was once a thriving cattle farm. Empty fences groaned under the strain of neglect, and the once-proud barns looked like they might collapse at any moment. Jack had been a strong man, proud of the life he had built with his own hands, but now he felt hollow. Everything he had worked for, his land, his cattle, even the respect of his neighbors, had slipped through his fingers. It had not happened overnight. The drought had come first, relentless and cruel. Crops that should have been lush and healthy turned brown and brittle, failing one season after another. The river that once ran through the property had dwindled to a trickle, barely enough to give the remaining livestock a sip of water. Jack had tried everything, buying feed, digging new wells, selling off some of his land, but each effort had been more expensive than the last. His savings were gone. His pride hurt even more than his wallet. Jack walked through the old barn, the wooden boards creaking under his boots. The smell of dust and old hay filled the air, and the silence was deafening. He remembered a time when this barn had been full of life. Cows mooing, horses whinnying, the sound of boots on the floor as he and his father worked together from sunrise to sunset. But those days were gone. His father had passed away 10 years ago, leaving Jack the ranch alone. Jack had loved his father's advice and company, and without him, the ranch had begun to feel emptier with each passing year. He picked up an old photograph that had been tucked into a dusty corner of the barn. It showed a younger Jack, smiling broadly, holding a calf in his arms. Next to him was his wife, Emily's mother, her face glowing with happiness. Jack felt a lump in his throat. They had had dreams, big dreams, when they first started the ranch, but life had other plans. His marriage had ended, leaving him alone, and the ranch that once symbolized their love and hard work had become a monument to his failures. Jack's neighbors rarely came around anymore. People whispered behind his back, saying he was finished, that he had no future. Creditors had begun calling daily, asking for money Jack didn't have. His friends had either moved away or distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with a man who had lost everything. Even the local store owner avoided him, though Jack had been a regular for decades. Every glance, every half-smile or polite nod felt like a reminder that the world had moved on without him. The isolation was unbearable. Jack spent his days walking the property, checking on the few remaining animals, repairing fences when he could, and trying to find a reason to keep going. But each day felt the same, gray, empty, and pointless. He had tried to sell the ranch, but no one wanted to buy it in its current state. He had thought about leaving, moving to the city, or starting over somewhere else, but where would he go? He had no family left, no friends, no support. The only life he knew was tied to this land, and even it was slipping away. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in streaks of orange and pink, Jack sat on the porch of the main house, rocking slowly in his chair. The silence was broken only by the distant howl of a coyote. He took a deep breath, feeling the cool wind on his face, and wondered how he had ended up here. How had he lost everything he had worked for so hard? The thought of giving up crossed his mind more than once. Maybe it was time to leave, to stop fighting. Maybe it was time to admit defeat. Just as the first stars began to appear in the night sky, Jack's phone rang. He almost ignored it, assuming it was another creditor demanding payment. But the voice on the other end was different, calm, yet urgent. It was Sheriff Daniels from the nearby town. Jack frowned, not understanding why the sheriff would be calling him. "Mr. Coleman," the sheriff said, "I know you're not in the best situation right now, but I need your help. There's a young girl, Emily. Her mother has gone missing and she's in danger. I thought you might be able to help." Jack felt a strange sensation in his chest, a spark he hadn't felt in years. He didn't know this girl personally, but something about her situation stirred something deep inside him. Maybe it was the fatherly instinct he hadn't realized he still had. Maybe it was just the need to feel useful again. Whatever it was, he knew he couldn't ignore this call. The sheriff explained that Emily had been left alone by her mother's careless friends. She had nowhere safe to go, and there were people who might try to take advantage of her. Jack listened carefully, nodding even though the sheriff couldn't see him. As he hung up the phone, Jack felt a sense of purpose he hadn't felt in years. For the first time since the drought began, since the ranch started to fail, he had a reason to act. He wasn't just a man who had lost everything. He could still protect someone, still make a difference. The next morning, Jack prepared himself for the journey. He loaded his old truck with supplies, blankets, food, water, first aid supplies, and checked the rifle he kept for emergencies. The sun was rising, casting long shadows across the dry fields, and Jack felt a mix of nerves and determination. He didn't know what awaited him, but he knew he couldn't back down. Not this time. Not for this girl. As he drove through the dusty roads toward the outskirts of town, Jack's mind wandered. He thought about the life he had lost, about the mistakes he had made, and about how easily a person could feel defeated when life kept knocking them down. But he also thought about what it meant to have a second chance, not for himself, but for someone else. Maybe saving Emily would be the first step in saving himself too. The journey was long and the roads were rough, but Jack kept his eyes on the horizon. He remembered how his father had taught him to never give up, to always keep moving forward, even when the odds seemed impossible. Those lessons had seemed irrelevant for years, buried under the weight of failure and loss. But now, with a purpose to protect a young girl, those lessons came flooding back. He felt stronger, more alive, and more focused than he had in years. As he approached the location the sheriff had given him, Jack saw the abandoned farmhouse in the distance. It looked worn and fragile, surrounded by thick trees and overgrown grass. His heart quickened. He didn't know what he would find, but he knew he had to be ready for anything. Every step toward the farmhouse was filled with tension and anticipation. The wind rustled through the trees, and Jack could hear the distant chirping of birds and the faint creaking of the old building. Jack parked his truck a safe distance away and approached the house cautiously. He kept his senses alert, listening for any signs of danger. The front door was slightly ajar, creaking in the breeze. Jack took a deep breath, reminding himself that he was not the man he had been a year ago. He had learned, he had grown, and he had something to fight for now. For Emily. As he stepped inside, the dim light of the morning sun filtered through broken windows. Dust danced in the air and the smell of neglect filled his nostrils. He called out softly, "Emily, it's Jack. I'm here to help." For a moment there was silence. Then a small, frightened voice responded. Who are you?" Jack's heart ached at the fear in her voice. "My name is Jack. I'm here to help you. You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you." A soft whimper came from the corner of the room, and Jack saw a small figure huddled under a tattered blanket. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear and uncertainty, but as she looked at Jack, he could see a glimmer of trust beginning to form. Jack knelt down slowly, keeping his voice calm and gentle. "You don't have to be scared," he said. "I'm going to take you somewhere safe. You won't be alone anymore." The relief on her face was immediate, though tentative. Jack reached out his hand, and after a moment of hesitation, she took it. In that moment, something shifted inside Jack. The emptiness he had felt for so long began to fade, replaced by a sense of responsibility and care he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't just a man who had lost everything. He was someone who could protect, someone who could make a difference. As they walked out of the farmhouse together, Jack looked around at the land he had once called his own. It was broken, worn, and weary, much like him. But for the first time in years, he felt hope. He had a purpose again. and he knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would face them, for Emily, and perhaps in time for himself as well. Jack drove his old truck along the winding dirt road that led to the outskirts of the town. Emily sat quietly in the passenger seat, her small hands gripping the edge of her coat. She was still wary, glancing at Jack every so often with a mixture of curiosity and fear. He could see the faint bruises on her arms and the tear stains on her cheeks, and it made his chest tighten. He wanted to say something comforting, but he knew that words alone wouldn't be enough. What she needed most was safety, a place where she could trust again. The farmhouse where they had been hiding was far from safe. Jack knew the area well. It had once been a good hunting ground and a place where he had ridden horses as a boy. But now the woods were dense, overgrown, and full of shadows. He had to be careful. Emily's mother's friends, the ones who had abandoned her, could still be nearby. Worse, the man the sheriff had warned him about, the one who had been keeping an eye on Emily, might be lurking close. Jack kept his eyes on the road, scanning the edges of the forest, his hand resting lightly on the rifle in the back seat just in case. Emily broke the silence first. Her voice was small, barely above a whisper. "Do you think they'll find me again?" Jack glanced at her, his eyes softening. "No one's going to hurt you again," he said firmly. "I promise. You're coming with me and I'll make sure you're safe. That's my job now." She nodded slowly, not speaking, but the faint tremble in her shoulders told him she was beginning to believe him. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. Jack knew he had to move fast. Time was critical. The longer they stayed near the farmhouse, the more dangerous it became. He had to get Emily somewhere secure before anyone realized she had left. They drove for nearly an hour in silence, the truck rattling over rocks and potholes. The sun climbed higher, casting sharp shadows across the forest floor. Jack felt a knot in his stomach. He knew that danger could appear at any moment. He had faced many challenges in his life, droughts, storms, and financial ruin. But this was different. This was about protecting a life smaller and more fragile than his own. Every decision he made had to be precise, careful, and deliberate. Finally, Jack parked the truck at a clearing near a small river. He had chosen this spot because it was isolated but also easy to defend. The water ran clear and cold, a welcome sight after days of dryness. Emily hesitated before stepping out, looking around nervously. Jack reached out his hand again, gently, and she took it. The simple act of holding hands seemed to calm her. She took a few tentative steps, her small boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. They moved carefully through the forest, Jack leading the way while Emily followed. He stayed alert, listening to every sound, the snap of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant cry of a bird. It was a tense journey, but he knew it was necessary. Emily had to trust him completely, and he had to ensure nothing threatened her along the way. After a while, they reached a narrow trail that led to a small, abandoned hunting cabin. Jack had used it before when he needed to be away from prying eyes. It wasn't much, just a wooden structure with a creaky roof and a simple fireplace, but it was safe for the time being. He helped Emily inside and set her down on the wooden bench. She looked around, her eyes wide with curiosity and relief. "This will be our safe place for now," Jack said gently. "We'll stay here until we figure out the next step. You're not alone anymore." Emily nodded, hugging herself tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack felt a warmth in his chest. Her trust, even if small, was a reward he hadn't expected. He had spent months feeling empty, defeated, and useless. But now, with Emily depending on him, he felt a sense of purpose returning. For the first time in years, he felt needed. And that need gave him strength. As the day passed, Jack explored the area around the cabin, making sure there were no hidden dangers. He gathered firewood, checked the nearby water source, and even found a few edible plants. Emily watched him quietly, occasionally asking questions about the forest, the animals, and the land. Jack answered patiently, telling her stories from his childhood about the ranch, the animals, and the lessons his father had taught him. Slowly, Emily began to relax, her eyes brightening as she listened. But Jack knew that the danger had not disappeared. The man who had been watching Emily could still be out there, and her mother's friends were unpredictable. He couldn't let his guard down, not for a second. He made a plan. He would stay with Emily at the cabin for the night, then take her to a more permanent safe place the next day. He would ensure that no one could reach her without facing him first. As night fell, Jack built a small fire inside the cabin. The warmth filled the small space, chasing away the chill of the evening. Emily sat close to him, her small hands reaching out to feel the heat from the flames. For a moment, the world felt safe and quiet, a stark contrast to the fear and uncertainty she had known for weeks. Jack watched her, thinking about how much she had endured. She was so young, yet she had already faced more hardship than many adults. And still, she had hope. She had not given up, not completely. That resilience reminded Jack of himself, of the man he had once been before life had beaten him down. He realized that helping Emily was not just about saving her, it was about restoring something inside himself too. Suddenly, a noise outside the cabin made Jack tense. He stood slowly, his eyes scanning the darkness beyond the door. A branch had snapped underfoot. He gripped the rifle, ready for anything. Emily instinctively ducked behind him, her small frame trembling. "It's okay," Jack whispered. "Stay down, I'll check it out." He opened the door carefully and peered into the night. The forest was quiet, moonlight filtering through the trees. After a few tense moments, he realized it was probably just a deer or a raccoon. Still, he stayed vigilant, knowing that danger could appear at any time. He closed the door and returned to Emily, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "See, everything's fine," he said softly. "You're safe here with me. No one's going to hurt you." Emily nodded, snuggling closer to him. Jack felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. The world was still full of uncertainty, and their journey was far from over. But for now, they were together, and that was enough. The next morning, Jack woke early. He brewed some coffee and warmed up a small breakfast. Emily helped him carry water from the nearby stream, her movements slow but steady. Jack smiled at her, feeling a quiet pride. She was stronger than she looked, and he knew that together they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. After breakfast, Jack packed some supplies into his backpack. He had decided it was time to move Emily to a more secure location, somewhere she could truly start to heal. The journey would be longer, but it was necessary. He explained everything to Emily in simple words, making sure she understood. She listened carefully, nodding, her trust in him growing with every passing moment. As they set out, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. The forest stretched before them, full of obstacles and uncertainty, but he was ready. He had a mission now, a reason to fight and someone to protect. Every step forward was a step toward safety, hope, and a future neither of them could yet imagine. Jack knew the road ahead would be difficult. There would be challenges, perhaps even danger from those who had abandoned or harmed Emily. But for the first time in a long while, he felt capable, confident, and alive. He had rescued her once, and he would do it again if needed. Emily's safety was now his responsibility, and he would not fail. Not again. The journey through the forest continued, with Jack leading and Emily following. They crossed streams, navigated fallen trees, and climbed over rocky terrain. Jack spoke softly to keep her calm, telling stories, joking lightly, and pointing out birds and animals along the way. Emily began to smile, her laughter small but genuine. That sound, so fragile yet beautiful, filled Jack with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. By the time they reached the next clearing, Jack could see a small town in the distance, a place where they could find help, shelter, and safety. Emily looked at it with wonder, and Jack felt a surge of hope. They were not out of danger yet, but they were closer to security than they had been in weeks. As they walked toward the town, Jack realized something important. Saving Emily was not just about protection. It was about giving her a chance to trust, to hope, and to believe in people again. And in doing so, he was also finding a way to heal himself, to reclaim a part of the man he had lost along with his ranch, his family, and his pride. Jack parked the truck near a small, quiet ranch that he had rented temporarily. It wasn't his old property, the one he had lost, but it was enough for now. The fields were green, the barns intact, and there were fences that could hold cattle. It wasn't much, but it was safe, and that was what mattered most. Emily watched the fields through the window, her eyes wide with curiosity. "Is this where we're going to live?" she asked softly. Jack nodded. "For now, yes, it's safe here. And we'll stay until we figure out what comes next." Emily's small hands trembled slightly as she opened the truck door. Jack held her hand firmly, giving her the support she needed. She had been through so much, and he could feel the weight of her fear. But he also sensed a spark of hope. Children were resilient in ways adults sometimes forgot, and he hoped to nurture that spark. Once inside the modest ranch house, Jack showed her the small room he had prepared. It was simple, just a bed, a small dresser, and a window that let in the morning sun. Emily looked around, taking it all in. "It's nice," she whispered. Jack smiled gently. "It's safe, and that's what matters most. You can unpack, make it your own, and we'll figure the rest together." Emily hesitated, then slowly began to arrange her few belongings. Jack watched quietly. For him, the simple act of seeing her take small steps toward comfort was a victory. It was the beginning of trust, the start of a bond that would grow stronger with time. After settling in, Jack took Emily outside to the barn. He wanted her to see a place that could be a safe haven, a place where she could learn, play, and feel a sense of accomplishment. The barn smelled of hay and wood, comforting scents that reminded Jack of his father and the life he had once built. He handed her a small broom and said, "We can start with small tasks, nothing too hard, just simple things to help around here." Emily looked unsure at first but soon began sweeping. Her small movements were careful, almost deliberate, as if she were afraid of making a mistake. Jack didn't correct her, didn't rush her. He let her work at her own pace, giving her the time she needed to feel confident. "You're doing a good job," Jack said after a few minutes. "See, that wasn't so hard, was it?" Emily smiled slightly, a small but genuine expression. It was the first time in a long while that Jack had seen her smile without fear shadowing it. He felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of pride and relief. She was opening up bit by bit. Over the next few days, Jack introduced Emily to the rhythms of ranch life. She learned to feed the animals, carry water to the horses, and collect eggs from the chicken coop. Each task was a small victory, building her confidence and giving her a sense of purpose. Jack was patient, never scolding her for mistakes, always guiding gently. He remembered the patience his father had shown him when he was a boy, and he tried to emulate that same approach with Emily. At night, they would sit by the fireplace, Emily curled up with a blanket, and Jack telling stories about the ranch, the animals, and the lessons he had learned over the years. He spoke of courage, of resilience, and of the importance of kindness. Emily listened, her eyes wide, occasionally asking questions. "Did you always know how to take care of animals?" she asked one evening. Jack chuckled softly. "Not always. My father taught me. He said if you care for something, it will care for you back. And sometimes, it teaches you things about yourself you didn't know." Emily nodded, absorbing his words. She seemed to understand more than her age suggested. Jack realized that she had endured hardships that had forced her to grow up too quickly. She was resilient, brave, and curious, and he felt honored that she was beginning to trust him, that she was letting him into her world. The bond between them grew stronger each day. Emily started to smile more, laugh at small jokes, and even play with the animals. Jack noticed that she had a natural way with the animals, a gentleness that reminded him of his mother. Watching her interact with the horses, pet the cows, and feed the chickens, Jack felt a sense of hope he hadn't known in years. But Jack also knew that the world outside their little sanctuary could be dangerous. Emily's mother was still missing, her friends unpredictable, and the man who had threatened her might still be watching. Jack had to prepare for any eventuality. He spent time reinforcing the fences, securing the barns, and making sure the property was safe. He also taught Emily basic safety skills, not to frighten her, but to empower her. One afternoon, as they walked through the fields checking on the animals, Emily asked a question that took Jack by surprise. "Will my mom come back for me?" Jack stopped walking and looked at her. He could see the fear and hope mingling in her eyes. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but no matter what happens, I'll make sure you're safe. You don't have to worry about being alone anymore." Emily's small hand found his, and she squeezed it tightly. In that moment, Jack realized that the bond between them was no longer just about protection. It was about trust, love, and the beginnings of a family that neither of them had expected to find. Days turned into weeks, and the rhythm of their life settled into a comforting pattern. Jack and Emily worked together on small projects around the ranch, repaired fences, planted a small garden, and even started teaching the animals some simple tricks. Emily began to thrive, her laughter ringing through the barns and fields. She would often run ahead of Jack on the trails, her small boots kicking up dust, and he would call out to her, feeling a pride that warmed his heart. Jack noticed changes in himself as well. The emptiness he had felt for years was slowly being replaced by a sense of purpose. Caring for Emily, teaching her, and protecting her reminded him of the man he had once been. It was as if the bond they were forming was healing wounds he hadn't even realized were still open. He felt alive again, connected to life, and driven by a responsibility that filled the void he had long endured. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, Jack and Emily sat on the porch, watching the animals settle for the night. Emily leaned against him, her small frame relaxed and comfortable. "Thank you, Jack," she said quietly. Jack smiled, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "You don't need to thank me," he said softly. "I'm glad you're here. We're going to be okay, you'll see." Emily smiled, a real smile full of warmth and trust. Jack felt a lump in his throat. She had been through so much, yet here she was, learning to laugh, to play, and to trust again. And he realized that he had been through so much too, but in protecting her, he had found something he thought he had lost forever: hope. That night Jack lay awake in the small guest room, listening to the sounds of the ranch, the distant lowing of cows, the soft rustling of leaves, and Emily's gentle breathing from the next room. He thought about the past, about the life he had lost, and about the uncertain future. But for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel defeated. He felt ready. Ready to face whatever challenges might come, ready to fight for Emily, and ready to rebuild not just a home, but a life filled with trust, love, and hope. The days continued to pass, each one bringing small victories. Emily learned to ride a horse with Jack guiding her, helped with feeding schedules, and even began to enjoy reading books by the fireplace. Jack taught her to identify plants, care for the animals, and respect the land. Through these simple lessons, Emily's confidence grew, and Jack felt a pride he hadn't known he could feel again. But even as life settled into this peaceful routine, Jack knew that the outside world still held dangers. Emily's mother could return, her friends might show up, and the man who had threatened her before could come back. Jack had to remain vigilant. He spent time fortifying the property, teaching Emily about basic safety, and making plans for emergencies. He was determined that no one would ever take Emily from him, not now, not ever. Through it all, the bond between them strengthened. Emily began to call Jack simply Dad, and Jack responded with gentle affection, understanding that this was not just about family. It was about trust, love, and a bond formed through shared hardship and care. They laughed, worked, and learned together, building a life that was simple, yet rich with connection and hope. Jack realized that life, even after loss, could offer second chances. Emily had brought him back to life in a way he had never imagined. And he knew, deep in his heart, that whatever came next, they would face it together, stronger, braver, and full of hope for the future. Life on the small ranch had begun to feel like a safe haven for Jack and Emily. Each morning they woke to the soft light of the sun spilling over the fields, and each evening they settled near the fireplace, talking quietly or watching the animals sleep. But Jack knew that peace was fragile. The world outside their little sanctuary had not forgotten them, and Emily's past was still a threat that could reach them at any time. One afternoon, while Jack was checking the fences, Emily ran up to him holding a small envelope. Her hands shook slightly and her face was pale. "Jack, this came from me," she said softly. She handed him the envelope and Jack carefully opened it. Inside was a simple note in familiar handwriting. "Emily, I want you back. You don't understand, I only want what's best for you. Come home." Jack felt his stomach tighten. He recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Emily's mother. Even after everything, she had found a way to contact her daughter. But Jack didn't trust her, not after the neglect, the absence, and the danger Emily had faced before. He folded the note carefully, hiding it from Emily's view. "Emily," he said gently, kneeling to meet her eyes, "you don't need to worry about that. You're safe here with me. We won't let anything happen to you." Emily nodded, but Jack could see the confusion and fear in her eyes. She wanted to believe her mother, even after everything. That was the nature of children. They longed for love, even from people who had hurt them. Jack knew he had to protect her, not just physically but emotionally. The next few days were tense. Jack kept a close watch, checking the perimeter of the ranch, making sure there were no strangers lingering nearby. He reinforced doors and windows, and even placed a few traps along the paths leading to the property, simple precautions to alert him if anyone tried to approach. Emily watched quietly, sensing the seriousness of the situation, but she trusted Jack enough to obey his instructions without question. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Jack noticed a figure approaching the property. It was a woman, walking slowly but confidently, with a mixture of determination and nervousness in her posture. Jack's heart sank. He knew instantly who it was. Emily's mother had come. He stepped outside, keeping Emily safely behind him. "Stay there," he said firmly. Emily obeyed, her small hands clutching his coat. The woman stopped at the edge of the yard, raising her hand slightly in a gesture meant to seem harmless. "Jack, I just want to see my daughter," she said, her voice trembling but determined. "I've changed. I can take care of her now." Jack studied her carefully. He could see the signs of exhaustion, maybe even regret, but he also saw the unpredictability that had caused Emily harm before. He had no reason to trust her. "Emily's safe here," Jack said calmly. "She doesn't need anything from you. You're not taking her anywhere." The woman's eyes filled with tears and she took a step closer. "Please, Jack, I've made mistakes. I know I hurt her, but I love her. I just want a chance to prove myself." Jack shook his head, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "Emily's life is my responsibility now," he said firmly. "You don't get to decide what's best for her after leaving her alone. She's safe here, and I won't let anyone take her from this home." The tension was thick. Emily's mother looked torn between anger and desperation. Jack could feel the storm coming, the emotional battle that would determine Emily's safety and future. He took a deep breath, trying to remain calm, knowing that any sudden movement could escalate the situation. I just want to be part of her life," her mother said softly. "Please, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Jack felt a surge of anger, tempered by the need to stay composed. He had no doubt that Emily's mother meant to manipulate the situation, appealing to Emily's longing for love. He needed to be strong, to protect the girl who had come to trust him. Being part of her life doesn't mean putting her at risk, he said. Right now, the safest place for her is here with me. Emily watched quietly, her small frame tense. She had never seen Jack this serious, this protective. She realized that he wasn't just a helper or a friend. He was someone who would fight for her no matter what. That realization gave her courage, and for the first time she spoke up. "Mom, I don't want to go," she said softly but firmly. "Jack keeps me safe. I want to stay here." Jack's heart swelled with pride. Emily's voice, though small, carried the weight of her trust in him. It was a turning point. Her mother's face fell, showing a mixture of frustration and sadness, but Jack knew that Emily's choice was what mattered most. After a long pause, Emily's mother finally nodded slowly. "I see," she said quietly. I'll leave you be for now, but know that I'll be watching." She turned and walked away, leaving a heavy silence behind. Jack closed the door carefully and turned to Emily. "You did good," he said softly. "You told the truth about what you want. That's brave." Emily smiled faintly, her small hand slipping into his. "I'm safe now, aren't I?" "Yes," Jack said firmly. "And I'll do everything I can to keep you that way." Even after her mother left, Jack knew the danger wasn't completely gone. There would be other challenges, perhaps legal battles, perhaps attempts by others to take advantage of Emily. But for now, they had won a small victory. Emily was safe, and she had begun to feel secure in a way she hadn't before. The following days were filled with preparation. Jack contacted a local lawyer, explained the situation, and began the process of securing legal guardianship for Emily. He didn't want to rely solely on his strength. He wanted to ensure that Emily's safety was protected by the law as well. Meanwhile, life on the ranch continued. Jack involved Emily in small tasks, reinforcing her confidence and helping her feel a sense of control over her world. They repaired fences, cleaned barns, and even planted a small garden together. Each day, Emily's trust in Jack grew, and Jack felt a sense of pride in watching her thrive. One afternoon, as they worked in the garden, Emily asked, "Jack, do you think Mom will come back?" Jack paused, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked at her, seeing both hope and fear in her eyes. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but whatever happens, we'll face it together. You're not alone, Emily, and no one is going to hurt you while I'm here." Emily nodded, feeling reassured by his words. She began to plant seeds alongside him, her small hands working the soil with care. Jack smiled, realizing that these simple moments, teaching her, protecting her, and sharing time together, were building a bond stronger than anything words could describe. That night, Jack and Emily sat by the fireplace, the warm glow illuminating their faces. Emily curled up against him, her head resting on his shoulder. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. Jack felt a lump in his throat. "You don't need to thank me," he said softly. "I'm the lucky one. You've reminded me what it feels like to care about someone again, to have someone to protect, to hope for the future." The fire crackled as they sat in silence, both lost in their thoughts. Jack knew that challenges were still ahead, but he also knew that they were no longer facing them alone. Emily had trust, courage, and hope, qualities that would help them navigate whatever came next. And Jack had a renewed sense of purpose, the strength to fight for her safety and happiness, no matter the obstacles. Days turned into weeks, and the legal process began to take shape. Jack worked tirelessly, ensuring that Emily's mother could not regain custody without proving that she had truly changed. The process was slow, frustrating, and sometimes tense, but Jack never wavered. Every step was a step toward securing a safe future for Emily. Through it all, the bond between Jack and Emily deepened. She began to call him Dad more often, and he responded with gentle affection, understanding that their connection was no longer just about protection. It was about family, trust, and love. They laughed together, shared stories, and supported each other through the challenges they faced. Even as the outside world continued to pose threats, Jack felt confident. He had faced storms before, literal and metaphorical, but nothing had prepared him for the strength he found in protecting Emily. She had given him a purpose, a reason to fight, and a sense of hope he had thought was lost forever. Jack knew that the future was uncertain, but for the first time in years he felt ready. Together, he and Emily would face whatever came their way. And no matter the challenges, no matter the obstacles, they would endure, because they had each other, and that was enough to face anything. The days grew longer, and the ranch began to feel like a real home. Jack woke each morning to the sound of birds singing in the trees, and Emily's small voice calling from the barn as she helped feed the animals. The ranch was no longer just a temporary shelter. It was slowly becoming a place filled with life, laughter, and hope. Jack watched Emily carefully, noticing the small changes that showed she was growing stronger. She was learning, exploring, and even beginning to smile without fear shadowing her face. Jack had spent weeks ensuring that Emily's mother could not interfere with her life. The legal process for guardianship was moving forward, slowly but steadily, giving Jack the assurance that Emily's safety was protected by law as well as by his care. He had met with lawyers, signed documents, and attended meetings that ensured Emily's future was secure. Each step forward felt like a victory, not just for Emily, but for both of them. One bright morning, Jack and Emily were out in the fields, planting vegetables in the small garden they had started together. Emily carefully placed each seed into the soil, her small hands gentle but steady. She looked up at Jack and said, "Do you think these will grow big and strong like the ones on the ranch back home?" Jack smiled, kneeling beside her. "Of course. We'll take care of them every day and they'll grow just fine, just like you. You're strong, Emily, and strong things always grow." Emily giggled, brushing soil off her hands, and Jack felt a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. It was the simple joys, the laughter, the trust, the shared work, that made this life worth fighting for. For the first time since losing his ranch and nearly everything he had, Jack felt truly alive again. As the weeks passed, they continued to rebuild their lives. Jack repaired more of the property, fixed broken fences, and even brought in a few animals to add to their small herd. Emily was always close by, learning the ways of the land, gaining confidence, and discovering the satisfaction of hard work. She was no longer the frightened child who had clung to Jack's coat on that first day. She was growing into a bright, resilient girl with a sense of security and joy that had been missing from her life for far too long. One afternoon, Jack received a call from the lawyer handling Emily's guardianship case. The news was good. The court had officially recognized Jack as Emily's legal guardian. It was a moment of relief and triumph for both of them. Jack could feel the weight of responsibility lifting slightly, replaced by a sense of pride and accomplishment. Emily, hearing the news, jumped into his arms, her small laughter ringing like bells in the quiet of the afternoon. "You're really mine now, aren't you?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with joy. Jack held her close, smiling. "Yes, Emily, you're safe with me, forever." The days that followed were filled with celebrations of small victories. They worked together on the ranch, shared meals by the fireplace, and enjoyed the simple pleasures of life in the countryside. Emily began to make friends in the nearby town, children who were curious about the new girl who lived on the ranch with her dad. Jack watched her from a distance, his heart swelling with pride as he saw her laughing, playing, and learning to trust others again. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Jack and Emily sat on the porch, looking out over the fields. The wind carried the scent of grass and soil, and the sky was painted with streaks of orange and pink. Emily leaned against Jack, her small hands resting on his arm. "Jack," she said softly, "do you think we'll ever have more animals on the ranch? Like cows, horses, and maybe even some sheep?" Jack chuckled, ruffling her hair gently. "We can have as many as we can take care of, and we'll make this ranch better than ever." "One step at a time, Emily. One step at a time." Emily smiled, her eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. She had hope now, hope she hadn't felt in years. And Jack knew that the hope she carried was something he had helped restore, just as she had helped him find hope again. As the weeks turned into months, the ranch continued to flourish. Jack's reputation slowly began to recover as well. Neighbors who had once distanced themselves began to see the change in him, the strength and determination it took to protect Emily and rebuild a life from almost nothing. They offered help with equipment, shared advice, and even brought gifts of seedlings and animals to add to the ranch. The community that had once turned its back on him now became a part of his life once more. Emily grew stronger every day. She learned to ride horses, care for the animals, and even help with bookkeeping for the small income the ranch generated. Jack watched her closely, amazed at her resilience and determination. She had endured so much, yet she faced each day with courage and curiosity. Her laughter and joy became the heartbeat of the ranch, reminding Jack every day why he had fought so hard to protect her. One morning, Emily found a small notebook in the drawer of her room. She opened it, her eyes bright with curiosity, and began to write down her thoughts, dreams, and daily experiences. Jack watched from the doorway, smiling quietly. Writing became her way of processing the past and imagining a future she could control. He encouraged her, praising her creativity and dedication. "Someday, Emily," Jack said gently, "you'll look back at this notebook and see how strong you've become. You'll see all the things you've learned, all the challenges you've faced, and how far you've come." Emily nodded, her small face serious. "I want to be brave like you, Jack," she said softly. Jack felt his throat tighten. "You already are," he said. "Bravery isn't about never being scared. It's about facing your fears, learning from them, and keeping going. And you've done that every day since I met you." As the seasons changed, the ranch transformed. The fields became lush and green, crops flourished in the garden, and the animals grew healthy and strong. Jack and Emily had built a life together, one filled with trust, love, and the security they both needed. The past no longer held power over them. They had created a new future, one that was bright and full of possibilities. One afternoon, Jack decided to take Emily to see the river near the ranch, the place where they had first stopped during their journey together. The water was clear, and the sound of it running over rocks was calming. Emily dipped her hands into the cool water, laughing as the liquid slipped through her fingers. Jack watched her, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. "You've come so far," he said softly, "and this is just the beginning, Emily. There's a whole world out there for you to explore. But you'll always have a home here with me." Emily smiled, her small hand finding his. "I'm glad we have each other," she said. Jack nodded, feeling the truth of her words. They had both endured loss, fear, and uncertainty. But together they had found hope, courage, and a family built on trust and love. The ranch was no longer just a piece of land. It was a symbol of resilience, strength, and the life they had fought to create. As the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Jack and Emily walked back to the ranch, side by side. They carried with them the memories of hardship, but also the promise of a bright future. Each step was a testament to their journey, the struggles they had faced, the bonds they had formed, and the new life they were building together. That night, as Emily slept peacefully in her small bed, Jack sat by the fireplace, reflecting on everything they had endured. He thought about the days when he had lost everything, when the ranch was empty, and when hope seemed impossible. And he realized that those dark times had made the victories they were now experiencing even sweeter. He had learned that life could be rebuilt, that trust could be restored, and that love, true love, could heal wounds that had seemed permanent. Jack smiled softly, feeling a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. Emily's breathing was steady and calm, a sign that she was finally safe and happy. He knew that challenges might come again as they always did in life, but he also knew that together they could face anything. They had survived the worst and emerged stronger, braver, and full of hope. The ranch was alive with the sound of animals, the rustle of leaves in the wind, and the quiet laughter of a young girl who had finally found safety and love. Jack walked through the barn, checking on the animals, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The land, once broken and empty, now thrived alongside the life he and Emily had built. And in the quiet of the night, Jack understood something he had long forgotten, that losing everything was not the end. It was only the beginning of a new life, one filled with hope, family, and the strength to face whatever came next. Emily had given him purpose, and he had given her safety and love. Together, they had created a world where both could flourish. As he looked out at the fields under the moonlight, Jack whispered softly, "We've made it, Emily. We've really made it." Emily, half asleep but smiling, murmured, "Yes, we did." Jack knew that this was the life he had been waiting for, not the life he had lost, but a better one, built with patience, courage, and love. And with Emily by his side, he knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, stronger than ever, and filled with hope for all the days to come.